I'm not going to say the R word because it's non-biblical. Did you know that no matter how many times you read the Bible, you will never find the word retirement? You knew that? All right. And that's because God does not believe in it. Abraham was 75 years old when God called him to move to a new land. You've got 7 more years to prepare. Moses was 80 when he led God's people out of Egypt. Joshua was 80 when he led the people into the promised land. And so, David, we are just waiting to see what God will ask you to do next. And in the meantime, I have some ideas of my own. We'll talk. Yes, we will. The chief did send a joke this week, but I think it was ABU. Everybody uses initials, so I do too. ABU stands for already been used. I have to look into that, but after I ask around, you may or may not hear it another week. But I turn to Billy Graham instead. A police officer pulls over an elderly couple and asks, "Do you know why you've been stopped?" "You were going 30 miles over the speed limit." "Young man," the woman responded, "we had to speed. We were trying to reach our destination before we forgot where we had to go." And I don't know about you, but I'm not too young to get that joke. Oh, yes. I have to say that for me, the 60s are the first decade I can physically feel. Prior to now, age truly was just a number because basically I felt no different when I was 55 than when I was 25. But that's no longer the case. Judith Viorst, the author of Alexander and the Terrible, Horrible, No Good, Very Bad Day, wrote a book for adults called Suddenly 60 and Other Shocks of Later Life. I read it, and in it she includes this alphabet, which I've revised slightly. Confirmands, you don't have to write this down. A is for arthritis. B is for bad back. C is for chest pains. D is for dental work. E is for eyesight. Can't read that. F is for fluid retention. G is for gas, which I'd rather not mention. And other gastrointestinal glitches. You get the idea. Jumping ahead, O is for osteo, P is for porosis, Q is for queasiness, R is for reflux, S is for sleepless nights, T is for tinnitus. But Z is for zeal. What'd you say? Z is for zing? Oh, that's the same. Zeal. Good. That works. It's for zeal in spite of all that is real. And zeal is what I am preaching on today. It's something you either have or you don't. But the main thing to remember is that nothing that happens to you physically can ever take it away from you. That is, not without your permission. It sounds as if the wise men had it. How else could they have accomplished what they did? Matthew doesn't tell us a lot about them. The truth is, we don't even know how many there were. People assume there were 3. But that's only because of the number of gifts that were presented. Again, nowhere in the Bible will you see the reference to 3 wise men. People assume their names were Casper, Melchior, and Balthazar. But Matthew never cites them. People think they know from which parts of the world they lived. But all that Matthew writes is that the wise men came from the east. Yet regardless of the paucity of details, Matthew tells us still exactly what we need to know. In order to find the Christ child, to see God's love incarnate for ourselves, it takes zeal. Zeal in the face of discouragement, zeal in the face of doubt, and zeal in the face of disillusionment. Because in today's passage, we learn that initially the wise men anticipated that they had arrived when they got to Jerusalem. Standing in front of King Herod, they fully expected to find the Christ child right there. But, as it happened, Herod, after consulting with his scribes and chief priests, made the unnerving discovery that his Jerusalem was not the chosen epicenter of God's future after all. It was Bethlehem. Bethlehem, a little nondescript village 6 miles south of where they currently were. That is where the Messiah was born. Another 6 miles away. At this point, the wise men could have said, Bethlehem, that's way out of the way. We're done. We've walked long enough. I tell you what, King Herod, you keep these gifts right here. And if the Messiah ever does come to Jerusalem, which I'm sure he will someday, give them to him then. Yet, because of their zeal, they were ready to go anywhere to find him. They did. And what a difference those 6 miles made. It's the same kind of difference we can realize in our own lives. Those times when, in order to see the Christ, we need to go the extra miles. You confirmands who are here taking sermon notes today, you made an important decision this morning. You could have slept in, you could have watched television, but instead you came the extra 6 miles here to church. And that choice will make a difference. Because Christ still asks us to go out of our way in order to find him. Think of all the people in this church who go extra miles every single day just so as to find the Christ. They prepare Bible studies or work on the books. They write checks or they tape services or they sing or they cook. Or maybe what they do is totally beyond the walls of this church and they serve in a school or a nursing home or in a store, you name it. But then when the week is over, willingly having gone out of their way, sometimes a lot longer than 6 miles, they know that they found Jesus. They don't have to do any of what they do. They have plenty they could just do at home. It's not required by any law that you serve at church. But when you love God as much as they do with the zeal that they have, somehow the 6 miles makes it all worthwhile. 10 years ago, Jan and George Acker began coordinating an effort started by Ted Damon. Every month, they sign on 6 volunteers to work at Bon Appetit, a soup kitchen at Second Congregational Church in Biddeford. The work is not long, arrive at 4:15 and finish by 6:15 at the very latest. It's not hard. A man by the name of Bob does all the cooking. And volunteers pour coffee, serve the food, wash pans, and clean up. But the rewards are many. George used to be called the governor by one of the clients. That client was convinced that George looked like a very distinguished statesman, which I'm sure you've noticed he does. And he would always go over to him, shake George's hand, and say, "Hello, Governor." Can't you see it? And Jan invariably has found satisfaction in knowing that, yes, the people do need her help. And yes, she truly wants to make a difference for them. And now, after a decade of service, they are ready to pass on the coordinator's torch. Yet both of them fully intend to continue as volunteers. But what a difference it's made deciding to make that 6-mile journey once a month. A difference in the lives of the people they've served and in their own as well. As I mentioned this morning in the parish notes, that's one insert. The other one is pink. And that other one contains a list of ways that you can go an extra 6 miles. Do you have to be a church member to serve? No. Just recognize where your zeal lies and then fill out the sheet and put it in the offering plate with the expectation that, yes, Jesus wishes to be found by you in this brand new year ahead. If you look at the list and you see that you're part of an organization that would love to have new volunteers, we have another sheet out next week. See me, your wishes will be granted. Do not be dissuaded by darkness or by distance. Do not be dissuaded by not knowing what the future may hold. Do not be afraid to commit. For the wise men trusted in the light of a lone star. And they found their way to the Christ child. And we can do the same. I love a poem called Truck Lights by Renee Fumalo that I heard once at a memorial service. It takes place in northwest Canada. Wintertime and very cold. Early afternoon, but already dark. I'm driving in my 15-year-old pickup truck, and an old man asks me for a ride. After 10 kilometers, the old man says, "You know, driving the truck is like having faith in God. You start the engine and put the lights on. You could have said, 'I see only 100 meters ahead. Further on, it's 100,000 kilometers of darkness.' We cannot reach our destination, but you put the truck in gear in faith. You start to move, and the lights keep showing the way ahead of you. That must be the way with God, who shows us only a tiny bit into the future, just enough for our next move. If we are afraid and if we stand still, we'll never see farther ahead. But if we go with the little light we have, that light keeps showing us the way, on and on and on, all 6 miles. Amen.